The vast emptiness of space held no warning of the impending catastrophe. The Zephyrian civilization had spent millennia perfecting their biotechnology, transforming their home system into a living garden of extraordinary beauty. Their massive orbital habitats pulse with bioluminescent light, each one a self-sustaining ecosystem housing millions. The Zephyrians themselves, tall beings with iridescent skin and flowing tendrils, had long since moved past the concept of warfare, focusing instead on advancing their mastery over organic technology. High Scholar Lyra stood in the central nexus of New Aurora, their capital habitat, watching the neural interfaces dance with activity as billions of data streams flowed through the living computer systems. The habitat's outer shell, a masterpiece of bioengineered crystal and living metal, filtered the harsh radiation of their binary stars into a soft, nurturing light that fed their vast gardens. High Scholar, we're detecting unusual gravimetric disturbances at the system's edge, announced First Observer Kane, his tendrils rippling with concern. The living displays around them shifted, showing a cascade of approaching anomalies. Lyra's response died in her throat as the first Void Dominion ships emerged from hyperspace. Unlike the organic curves and flowing lines of Zephyrian vessels, these were angular nightmares of black metal and crackling energy fields. Where Zephyrian ships merged seamlessly with space around them, these invaders tore through reality itself, leaving wounds in the fabric of space-time. The attack came without warning or demands. The Void Dominion ships opened fire, their weapons designed not just to destroy but to corrupt. The bioengineered defenses of the outer habitats, capable of healing from almost any natural damage, began to decay and die as dark energy weapons struck them. Millions of voices cried out through the neural network as the first habitat fell. "Send the call," Lyra commanded, her voice steady despite the horror unfolding before her. "Contact the Galactic Council, the Ascended Collective, anyone who will listen." The responses came quickly, each one a deeper blow than the last. The Galactic Council, those ancient races who had guided younger species for millions of years, declined to intervene, citing their policy of non-interference in natural evolutionary conflicts. The Ascended Collective, beings of pure energy and thought, expressed their regret, but insisted that physical conflicts were beneath their concern. Even the mercantile federations, despite their vast fleets, refused to risk their assets in what they termed an unprofitable venture. As the days passed and more habitats fell, desperation grew. The Zephyrians' defensive capabilities, focused on healing and adaptation, proved useless against weapons designed to corrupt the very essence of organic matter. Their attempts to communicate with the invaders met only silence and continued assault. "High Scholar," Kane called out, his voice carrying a note she had never heard before. "Hope. We're receiving a response. But it's not from any of the advanced races. It's coming from a system on the outer rim, a young species we've barely noticed before." The message was different from the formal, diplomatic responses they'd received from other races. It was short, direct, and carried in what their systems identified as a primitive radio format. "This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We've reviewed your situation. Help is coming. Hold your positions. Humanity stands with you." Lyra studied the data about this species called humans. They were younger than almost any spacefaring race, barely 2 centuries into faster-than-light travel. Their technology was crude by Zephyrian standards, based on metal and plasma rather than organic engineering. They were still divided into nations, still fought among themselves, still struggled with their own internal conflicts. "They can't possibly help us," one of the council members argued. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. What can they do against an enemy that we can't even slow down?" The answer came 3 days later, as the first human ships arrived at the edge of the system. They were ugly by Zephyrian standards. Blocky, armored vessels bristling with what were clearly weapons. But they moved with a purpose and coordination that spoke of extensive combat experience. "This is Admiral Chen to all Zephyrian forces. The transmission cut through the chaos of battle. Fall back to your inner defensive lines. You've done enough. Let us show you why the galaxy's peaceful races should have paid more attention to their violent children. As Lygra watched the human fleet engage the Void Dominion forces, she began to understand why her people's peaceful evolution might have left them blind to certain fundamental truths about survival in a hostile universe, and why, perhaps, the galaxy's older races had made a grave mistake in dismissing humanity as too young and volatile to matter. The lesson was about to be taught in a language that the Void Dominion would understand all too well, the language of war, written by a species that had never stopped learning how to fight. The human fleet's arrival changed everything. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the EDF Thermopylae, her weathered face illuminated by tactical displays showing the overwhelming odds they faced. The Void Dominion ships outnumbered them 5-1, their dark energy weapons unlike anything humanity had faced before. But Chen smiled. Humanity had always thrived against impossible odds. All ships, Combat Formation Delta, Chen commanded, her voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. Remember your training. These bastards have never fought humans before. Let's show them why that was a mistake. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, deploying in what seemed like chaos to the watching Zephyrians, but was actually a carefully choreographed dance of death. Unlike the rigid, predictable formations of the Void Dominion, the human ships scattered, reformed, and struck from impossible angles. High Scholar Lyra, Chen transmitted to the Zephyrian Command Center. We need you to evacuate all civilians from the outer habitats. What's about to happen isn't in any of your historical records. The human ships launched their first strike. Instead of the energy weapons favored by most advanced races, they used what the Zephyrians initially dismissed as primitive kinetic weapons. But these were no simple projectiles. They were specialized tungsten rods accelerated to near-relativistic speeds, carrying enough energy to crack even the Void Dominion's supposedly impenetrable shields. Fascinating, First Observer Kane commented, watching the battle unfold. Their weapons are technologically inferior, yet they're achieving impossible results. How? The answer became clear as the battle progressed. Humanity hadn't developed their military technology in a vacuum of peace like most species. Every weapon, every tactic had been refined through centuries of conflict. They didn't fight fair, they fought to win. Human electronic warfare systems, crude but incredibly aggressive, tore through the Void Dominion's sophisticated defense networks. While other species had developed elegant cyber warfare algorithms, humans had created viral attacks that mutated and evolved in real time, overwhelming their enemies through sheer unpredictability. Target their flagship, Shen ordered as the battle reached its peak. All ships, execute maneuver Constantinople. The human fleet suddenly broke apart, each ship seeming to flee in random directions. The Void Dominion commanders, their tactical computers trained on millions of historical battles, predicted the most logical escape routes and positioned their ships to intercept. It was exactly what Chen had counted on. The fleeing human ships suddenly reversed course, their engines burning way beyond safety limits. They struck from dozens of directions simultaneously, their primitive kinetic weapons concentrating on a single point in the Void Dominion's formation. The flagship's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, proved useless against the physical impact of hundreds of hypersonic projectiles. Impossible, the Zephyrian tactical officers whispered as the massive Void Dominion flagship split apart, its sophisticated systems undone by the simple application of overwhelming kinetic force. But Chen wasn't finished. As the enemy fleet reeled from the loss of their command ship, the human vessels launched their second phase. Boarding pods, considered an obsolete tactic by most species, slammed into the surviving Void Dominion ships. While other races had abandoned physical combat in favor of drone warfare, humanity had perfected the art of close-quarters battle. The Zephyrians watched in awe as human marines, clad in powered armor that looked primitive but proved devastatingly effective, fought their way through enemy vessels. Their combat styles were a brutal mix of ancient martial arts and modern technology, using everything from high-tech plasma weapons to simple combat knives with equal deadly efficiency. "This is why we answered your call," Chen explained to Lyra as the battle turned decisively in their favor. While the advanced races were ascending beyond conflict, humanity never forgot a simple truth: sometimes you have to fight to protect what matters. We're not the most sophisticated species, but we're the ones who remember how to wage war so others can live in peace. The remaining Void Dominion ships began to retreat, their carefully planned invasion undone by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive and irrelevant. As they fled, Chen transmitted one final message. "Tell your leaders, Earth stands ready to defend any peaceful species against aggression. We'll be the warriors so you don't have to be. But remember this, if you ever decide to become the aggressor, you've seen what awaits you." Lyra watched the human fleet regroup, their ships bearing scars but their formation as tight as ever. She understood now why the older races had been wrong to ignore humanity. They weren't just another young species stumbling toward the stars. They were the guardians the galaxy didn't know it needed, carrying the burden of warfare so others could pursue peace. The battle was over, but its implications were just beginning to ripple through galactic society. Humanity had arrived on the interstellar stage, not as supplicants seeking guidance from ancient races, but as protectors willing to fight the battles others couldn't, or wouldn't, face. The aftermath of humanity's first victory brought little time for celebration. Within hours, long-range sensors detected massive Void Dominion reinforcements approaching. Not just ships, but entire battle fleets emerging from hyperspace. This wasn't just an invasion force anymore. This was an armada meant to crush any resistance. Admiral Chen stood in the Joint Command Center, newly established within the Zephyrian central habitat. Around her, holographic displays showed the approaching enemy forces, their numbers far greater than anything her fleet had faced before. But her expression remained confident as she addressed the gathered human and Zephyrian leaders. "They've taken the bait," she announced, a grim smile playing across her face. "Now we show them why challenging humanity was their biggest mistake." The Zephyrians watched in confusion as the human fleet seemingly abandoned their defensive positions, leaving several outer habitats exposed. First Observer Kane turned to Chen, his tendrils writhing with anxiety. "Admiral, you're leaving our people unprotected." "No," Chen replied, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "We're teaching your enemies about human history, specifically about the art of the ambush." As the Void Dominion fleet pressed their apparent advantage, charging into the seemingly abandoned space, humanity's true strategy revealed itself. The debris field from the previous battle, which the Void Dominion sensors had dismissed as destroyed ships and stations, suddenly came alive. What appeared to be wreckage transformed into countless automated weapon platforms, their design deliberately crude to avoid detection. Lesson 1. Chen narrated as the trap was sprung. Humans learned warfare not just from technology, but from nature. Every predator knows the value of patience. The automated platforms unleashed a devastating barrage, but they weren't aimed at the enemy ship's heavily armored hulls. Instead, they targeted the space around them with specialized weapons that the Void Dominion had never encountered: gravity disruptors. The weapons didn't try to penetrate the advanced shields. They warped the very space the ships occupied. Fascinating, High Scholar Lyra observed as entire enemy squadrons found their carefully calculated formations twisted into chaos. You're not trying to overpower their technology. You're using the fundamental forces of nature against them. But this was just the beginning. As the Void Dominion fleet struggled to regroup, the main human force struck. Their ships moved in patterns that seemed random to their enemies, but followed complex algorithms based on centuries of guerrilla warfare tactics. Each vessel operated independently yet as part of a greater whole, making it impossible for the enemy's predictive computers to calculate their movements. "We studied your records of the Void Dominion's previous conquests," Chen explained to the amazed Zephyrian leaders. They always win because they're technologically superior and utterly predictable in their arrogance. But humanity, we're the champions of asymmetric warfare. The battle transformed into a deadly dance of innovation versus raw power. Human ships deployed experimental weapons that seemed to defy the laws of physics, quantum entanglement disruptors that turned the enemy's sophisticated targeting systems against themselves, temporal mines that created microscopic time distortions around critical ship components. Your weapons, Kane observed, they're not just designed to destroy. They're designed to inspire fear. Chen nodded. Psychological warfare. When you can't match your enemy's strength, you make them afraid to use it. Every human weapon has two purposes: physical damage and psychological impact. The Void Dominion commanders, faced with tactics and technologies that defied their strategic databases, began to show signs of confusion. Their formations became more defensive, their attacks more hesitant. The species that had never known defeat was learning the taste of uncertainty. But the true masterstroke came when Chen revealed humanity's understanding of their enemy's psychology. The human fleet transmitted a signal that cut through all enemy communications, the sound of human laughter, accompanied by tactical data suggesting this entire battle was just a test, a probe to identify the Void Dominion's weaknesses. Let them think about that, Chen said as the enemy fleet began a tactical retreat. Let them wonder what we're really capable of, what other surprises we have waiting. In warfare, fear of the unknown is often more powerful than any weapon. The Zephyrian leaders watched in awe as the mighty Void Dominion armada withdrew, their perfect formations shattered, their confidence broken. They had come expecting to crush a primitive species and instead encountered something they couldn't understand, an enemy that fought not with brute force but with cunning, deception, and psychological warfare. This battle isn't over, Chen warned as the enemy ships disappeared into hyperspace. But we've achieved something more valuable than a decisive victory. We've made them doubt themselves. And for a species built on absolute certainty of their superiority, doubt is a poison that will spread through their entire empire. High Scholar Lyra looked at the human admiral with new understanding. Her people had thought warfare was about technology and power. Humanity had shown them it was about innovation, psychology, and the willingness to fight in ways your enemy never expected. The real war was just beginning, but its nature had fundamentally changed. The Void Dominion had come to conquer a peaceful species protected by primitive humans. They were about to learn they had awakened something far more dangerous: humanity's full creative potential for warfare. In the weeks following the initial battles, the true nature of humanity's military power began to emerge. The Zephyrians had mistaken humanity's seemingly primitive technology for weakness. Now they realized it had been a carefully crafted deception. Admiral Chen revealed the truth during an emergency council meeting aboard the EDF Thermopylae. What you've seen so far, she explained, activating a holographic display that filled the command center, was our conventional response. Now let me show you why the Void Dominion's next attack will be their last. The display showed massive structures emerging from hyperspace at strategic points throughout the system. The Zephyrians gasped as they recognized the scale of human preparation. These weren't just battle stations, they were mobile fortress worlds, each one housing technology far beyond what humanity had previously displayed. We've spent centuries preparing for this moment, Chen continued, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's history. Every war we fought among ourselves taught us lessons. Every conflict forced us to innovate. We didn't advance beyond warfare like other species. We mastered it. The fortress worlds began deploying what the humans called their legacy fleet, ships that combined centuries of military innovation with technology reverse-engineered from a dozen fallen civilizations. Unlike the deliberately crude vessels they'd used before, these ships showcase humanity's true technological capability. You kept this hidden, High Scholar Lyra observed, her tendrils rippling with a mixture of awe and unease. All these years, while the galaxy dismissed you as primitives. We learned early that being underestimated is the greatest tactical advantage, Chen replied. The Void Dominion thinks they've measured our capabilities. They're wrong. The evidence of humanity's preparation became clear as the fortress worlds activated their defense systems. Quantum fields capable of redirecting entire fleets through spacetime. Artificial singularity generators that could trap and destroy ships without risking collateral damage. Technology that seemed to break the very laws of physics. First observer Kane studied the readings with growing amazement. These aren't just weapons. This is technology that could have made you the dominant force in the galaxy. Why hide it? Because humanity learned the hardest lesson of all, Chen answered. Power isn't about domination, it's about protection. We developed these capabilities not to conquer, but to defend. Every weapon you see was designed with a single purpose, to stop exactly the kind of threat the Void Dominion represents. When the Void Dominion launched their massive counterattack, they found not the primitive defenders they expected, but an enemy that had spent generations preparing for this exact moment. The human fortress worlds activated their primary weapons, devices that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. The battle that followed wasn't just a demonstration of superior firepower. It was a symphony of strategic brilliance. Human ships moved with impossible precision, their movements guided by artificial intelligences that had spent centuries studying warfare. Each tactical decision was the product of millions of simulated battles, each response calculated to exploit weaknesses the enemy didn't know they had. Watch carefully, Chen told the Zephyrian leaders as the battle unfolded. This is why humanity chose to be the galaxy's guardians rather than its conquerors. We could have used this technology to dominate, but we chose to wait, to preserve it for moments when it was truly needed. The Void Dominion's mighty armada found itself trapped between the fortress world's overlapping fields of fire. Their advanced shields, previously thought impenetrable, crumbled before weapons designed to unravel the very fabric of spacetime. Their sophisticated tactical computers, faced with human technology that defied their understanding, began to fail. But the most devastating weapon in humanity's arsenal wasn't their advanced technology. It was their ability to adapt and innovate in real time. As the Void Dominion attempted to counter each new weapon, they found the humans had already developed 3 more approaches, each more devastating than the last. You never stopped advancing, Lyra realized, watching as the battle turned into a rout. While other species sought peace through stagnation, humanity kept pushing the boundaries of what was possible. We had to, Chen replied softly, because somewhere in the darkness between the stars, we knew something like the Void Dominion was waiting, and when they came, someone needed to be ready. The battle ended not with the extinction of the Void Dominion fleet, but with their complete surrender. Humanity had proven not just their military superiority, but their wisdom in knowing when to show mercy. The message was clear. They were powerful enough to destroy their enemies utterly, but chose not to. As the dust settled, the galaxy began to understand a fundamental truth. Humanity had become not just a warrior species, but the protectors of peace itself. They had mastered warfare not for conquest, but to ensure that the horrors of war would touch as few worlds as possible. The Void Dominion's surrender marked not just the end of a battle, but the beginning of a new era in galactic history. An era where peace was protected not by ignorance of war, but by the deterrent of humanity's watchful guardianship.